Well, I think the visit of our Prime Minister Albanese to China is a very significant moment in the redevelopment of our relationships after the very serious deterioration of those relationships a few years ago. It's been the policy of the Albanese Labor government since they were elected in 2022 to rebuild those relationships, and I think they've done that very successfully. But the fact that Mr. Albanese is spending six days in China, it's a long visit. He's going to a number of different centres, so it's a significant moment in the re-establishment of the kind of closer relationships we had with China before the crisis in relationships that we saw in the years before 2022. I think there's always going to be, in the relationship between Australia and China, of course, very strong economic factors, very strong, or what you might call social factors, with a lot of connections, social connections, family connections between China and Australia. But there's also always going to be significant differences on strategic questions, particularly with the positioning of Australia in relation to the US-China strategic rivalry. I think Australia's own relations with the United States are undergoing some kind of transformation at the moment as a result of the Trump presidency, but I think also of deeper factors in the evolving US approach to its role in the world. But fundamentally, Australia, I think, is still going to be more inclined to support the United States than China in the US-China strategic rivalry. I think we'd be foolish to imagine that the relationship between Canberra and Beijing can be unaffected by what does seem to me to be a very fundamental difference in what you might call the underlying strategic objectives of the two countries and governments. On the one hand, it does seem to me that China has a fundamental objective to increase its regional influence, whereas I think Australia's fundamental objective has been to support and help defend America's leading position in East Asia and the Western Pacific. And I think specific issues, for example, like the Darwin Ports issue, which has been quite contentious in the Australia-China relationship in recent years, is really a reflection of that underlying difference in fundamental strategic objectives. Now, I think in the long term, that issue is going to be resolved not between Canberra and Beijing, but between Beijing and Washington. I think Australia is in the end going to be something of a spectator to that process. But as long as the US and China remain strategic rivals over their differing visions of their future role in East Asia and the Western Pacific, and as long as Australia sees its own security as depending on the maintenance of a strong or even a dominant position for the United States in East Asia and the Western Pacific, then there's always going to be an inherent tension between Canberra and Beijing on those things, which are going to need to be managed. On the other hand, what we've discovered in the last few years is that notwithstanding those differences, the relationship more broadly, including the economic relationship, can develop quite positively. And I think what Mr. Albanese is trying to demonstrate by his 6-day visit is that notwithstanding that underlying strategic difference, the relationship has a lot of potential.